Are you looking to grow revenues, increase profitability, or obtain financing? If so, you came to the right place.
Running a business is all about leadership. How do you become a better leader? Learn from the successful entrepreneurs and business owners how to lead your organization more effectively. That's why we created Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business, to help you succeed with your host, Andrew Frazier, Business Growth Pro and CFO and founder of the Small Business Pro University. Every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, we're joined by experienced entrepreneurs and business owners who share their secrets to success via live stream. Also, every Friday morning, we release a new podcast episode. Either way, you will learn about developing your business leadership skills from our roster of highly performing guest experts. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbpro.u.com.
Good evening. Welcome back to Leadership Live at 8:05. I'm your host, Andrew Frazier, and excited about hanging out with you once again on Tuesday evening. As you know, there's so many things that you need to know as a business owner that you can't possibly know them all. That being the case, your business can only go as far as you're prepared to take it. So it's key for you to continuously develop your knowledge and your leadership skills. So you can continue to move your business forward. And that's what Leadership Live at 8:05 is all about. I'm excited tonight, our guest, Bruce Eckfeldt, and we're really going to talk about standing out from the competition with a command. Standing out from the competition to command a superior price. Anybody who knows or who's read my books know that your most important job as a business owner is sales and marketing, especially when you're small. So many of our shows focus on that. And tonight's another look or perspective into how to sell and market more effectively. So really looking forward to talking to Bruce tonight. He's very knowledgeable and has a lot of valuable stuff to share. So let me bring him on real quick. Hey, Bruce, how you doing tonight?
Hi, Andrew. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to hang out with me tonight.
No, it's my pleasure. My pleasure.
Okay, excellent. So we know each other, but the audience doesn't know you. So it would be great if you could take a few minutes and sort of talk a little bit about your journey. How did you get to where you are and where are you now? And then we'll pick up the conversation based on that. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds great. And fun topic. This is one of my key topics is strategy and differentiation. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you tonight. So my background. So originally I was actually an architect. I did 2 degrees at McGill University in Montreal. Was in the profession for a little bit, but got recruited to New York. Worked with interactive media. I was doing a lot of modeling and 3D work, and kind of got more into software development and kind of product development, product strategy and business strategy. And then ended up founding a tech company back in 2002. We scaled that, put it in the 500 list a couple of times. I sold it in 2013 and have kind of transitioned into advisor, coach, primarily working with CEOs and leadership teams on strategy and strategy execution, building out leadership capacity. And I've worked with kind of everything from kind of early stage startups to growth companies. And now I do a lot of prepping for exits and transactions. So my work today is a lot of helping, businesses that are working and that they've got a going concern, but they're really trying to figure out how to scale strategically and then scale with an intention of having some kind of transaction, either, financial exit, strategic exit, transferring to next generation, kind of depending on the situation and the nature of the business. But, that's the work that I do today. It's fun. I work in lots of different industries and a lot of kind of different insights based on business models. But, at the end of the day, there are some core principles that I find just apply to pretty much every business at every stage, which is, how do you how do you win, and how do you create a differentiated position? How do you own that position through operational excellence? And then how do you build leadership capacity to be able to execute on that? So that's a little bit about me. Happy to dig into any one of those that you want to expand upon. Otherwise, that's kind of how I got to where I am today.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. So, no, I definitely appreciate the introduction. I think that, we've got some great points that we can dig into. And, one of the topics or key points is, and you probably agree with this, probably the most important piece of the success of your business is your marketing strategy. Which is really what we're going to be talking about, how to have a great marketing strategy. So, those of you who are here, definitely you want to listen up, because this is one of the most important topics that you can hear.
Yeah.
So before we get started, I just want to take a minute. We do this show through the Small Business Pro University, and I want to play a short video about what the Small Business Pro University is, because we're really focused on helping business owners make 2025 their best year ever. Many small businesses experience low or no revenue growth, and the owners are not making enough money. I founded Small Business Pro University to help you break that cycle by empowering you with greater knowledge and enhanced skills to lead your organization more effectively. Over the past 15 years, I have collaborated with organizations like the Small Business Development Center, Rising Tide Capital, Empower the Village, NJMEP, Rutgers University, and SCORE to work one-on-one with over 1,000 business owners and teach tens of thousands of people about business. My experience includes serving as a naval officer, managing businesses, graduating from MIT, earning an MBA from NYU, and achieving the CFA designation, which has prepared me to accomplish my mission of helping 1,000,008 business owners to sell more, maximize profit, and finance growth by 2028. My vision is to create the ultimate business ecosystem for entrepreneurs. Small Business Pro University empowers entrepreneurs like you to run their businesses more professionally and create sustainable enterprises. We employ my proven proprietary Masterpreneur Playbook framework to guide your journey along the Masterpreneur path and facilitate your Masterpreneur evolution to work on your business and scale faster and easier. Small Business Pro University provides access to valuable resources, partnerships, and relationships that will help you to sell more, maximize profit, and finance growth. Our Masterpreneur initiatives include the Small Business Pro Network, 100+ expert-led multimedia courses, intensive training workshops, Spanish language training, Leadership Live at 8:05 live stream and podcast, in-person Power Breakfast events, and advisory coaching, consulting, and training services. All right. Good evening. Welcome back to Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business. I'm here with Bruce Eckfeldt, and we're going to talk a little bit about standing out from the crowd and commanding a superior price. So you mentioned that we're going to talk about differentiation tonight.
Yep.
It's one of those words that everybody thinks they know what it is until you ask them to define it. Yeah. And then they're like, I'm not sure. So if you can, start off with just, telling us what differentiation really means.
Yeah. So one of the best quotes I like, or one of the quotes I like particularly around this, Michael Porter had a phrase of, we don't compete to win, we compete to be different. And I think that is an important kind of mindset shift for most people, because I think a lot of people go into business, or they're in a business situation, they're trying to figure out how to beat the competition. And particularly at an earlier stage company, say under 50 million, 100 million in revenue. The fact is that you're not, you don't have to have a significant market share, right? Like you can have a very successful business or a very kind of niche segment of the market. And so the goal with differentiation is to figure out how can you stand out and how can you be different from all the other options that are out there, both direct and indirect competitors, in a way that is going to give you an awareness with a group of people that you care about or a group of people that you want to do business with. And so it's really about creating the perception in a segment of the market where you are unique and different in some meaningful way to them, and stand out, that have a unique and differentiated offering that allows you to command a superior price, meaning that you're not competing on price. And if you don't have a differentiated position, right, meaning that there's really not much difference between your product and service with the other options that are out there, then the problem is the only thing you can compete on is price. And, for an earlier stage company, for a smaller company, it is, you just don't have the ability to generate enough operational efficiency to effectively compete on price. If you're Walmart and you've got, international supply chains that you've optimized to the point where you can literally deliver products and services at a cost basis that is unique and different and better than anyone else in the world, then you can compete on price. But for earlier stage companies, it's not feasible. You may be able to do it for a little while, but you're not going to be able to sustain it, right? Anyone else is going to be able to copy that pretty quickly. So the answer is, it's how to identify a very specific niche market, understand what they really care about, and have your product or service differentiated, connect to those needs in a way that other options don't. And if you can do that, you can have a differentiated position. And with the differentiated position, people are willing to pay a premium price on that. So I know that was a little long, but that's kind of my definition or kind of explanation of what does it mean to have a differentiated position as a company.
Okay, no, that's great. I think you mentioned one key point for a lot of small business owners is you really don't want to compete on price.
Yeah.
Now, it's kind of a double-edged sword because most small business owners underprice what they're offering.
Yep.
But when you compete on price, that leaves you at a disadvantage on both ends. You're bringing in less revenue, and since you're small, your costs are higher, so your profitability suffers tremendously.
Yeah, you're in the squeeze. You're in the margin squeeze.
Yeah. So how do you if you're going to differentiate, there's a lot of different ways you can differentiate. And you talked about, you got to look at your niche or your target market.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give some examples of how, some companies either that you work with or you know of that, just to highlight, how they're differentiated from their competition?
Yeah. So the two things you just mentioned, which I think are going to be important. One is you have to define some kind of meaningful segment, some kind of slice of the market that you care about, that you've got some kind of relationship to, that you think you can develop a differentiated position against. And it's a little iterative, meaning that, I might look at a market, I might find a segment, learn about that segment, understand what their needs and fears and the things that they're looking for are, what are the attributes that they're looking to buy against, and decide, okay, do I have the wherewithal, the kind of the capabilities, the assets to be able to differentiate in that market. You may find in doing that work that I actually can't differentiate very well with this market, but maybe there's another segment that I can differentiate on. So it is a little bit of an iterative process, a little bit of an exploration. So in terms of examples, I work with a professional services firm, and they do research services, and they do it for a lot of different organizations. But one of the groups that they found particularly, they had unique kind of capabilities were in Canada. They work with Indigenous cultures, First Nations, and they could do research for a lot of different groups. But their ability to be able to do that was based on their kind of skills and capabilities, but also things like access to particular archives and records, have access to universities. They know a lot of this work. They have relationships, right? And so as they've developed their services, they've realized that niche is something that they have the ability to really differentiate against, and no one else can provide the kind of research capabilities that they have. Now, some of this might be, for another company, it might be capabilities, it might be assets, right? You can differentiate. The things that you do can be quite different, but the idea is have a set of attributes that you excel at relative to the target customer's perception. And that's going to go a little technical on this, or it's a little bit of a kind of thinking exercise here. The attribute is what the customer cares about. How does the customer evaluate? What are they looking for? How are they making? What are the things the criteria they're using to make a purchase decision? That's an attribute. The differentiator is the thing that I have that allows me to own that attribute. So say we're doing a restaurant, right? Like as a customer base may have an attribute of, I want a certain quality of food or a certain type of food, or I want a certain type of service, or I want hours to be in a certain open a certain time frame. I want delivery to be of a certain speed. I want meals to arrive at a certain temperature. Right? These are all going to be attributes that the customers care about. As a company, what you want to do is identify that segment, really understand that segment in terms of we call demographic, psychographic needs and fears, and then timing considerations. Those are the things we look at when we look at a segment. And the more you can really kind of dig into that, and some of that is going to be easier to figure out, right? They're going to be aware of it. They're going to be able to communicate it to you, or you're going to be able to uncover that reasonably easily. The challenge with some of this stuff is sometimes they're not so aware of what they're making decisions on. But as a business, if you can figure out what are really the underlying drivers, the underlying criteria they're making purchase decisions on, that can give you a unique advantage, or can give you unique insight that then to allow you to create a differentiated position. So figure out what the attributes are. What are the things that they're using to make purchase decisions? What are the things they care about in terms of evaluating their options? Then I look at what are the operational capabilities, assets, systems, skills, techniques, things that I have as a company that could demonstrate to these folks, demonstrate to your market that you can deliver on those in a way that's unique and different from everyone else. That is how you create a differentiated position. And there's a lot we can get into, all the kind of how you do that and the strategies around that. And there's a lot of kind of twists and turns, but really think about finding a niche, understanding that niche in terms of how they really make a purchase decision, and then understanding what do I need to have in terms of capabilities to be able to communicate that positioning. And we can talk a little bit about marketing, but I would say marketing is effectively being able to communicate that differentiated position to the market in a way that is meaningful to them. So I know there's a lot on the table there. We can parse through it. But.
Okay, definitely. You covered a lot of very valuable points. So I'm going to just try and break it down somewhat.
Please.
So one of the things you talked about is it's an iterative process, meaning that you try things, you learn from them, and you try new things based on what you learned. And early on in business, it takes a little while to figure out the right product market fix. But also you talked about figuring out what the customer, it's really about the customer. So it's important to listen more than you talk. And I think when a lot of people think of sales and marketing, they think about it as telling the customer what you have. And I'm sure you probably run into that with people. How do you all the time? How do you coach them or bring them around to understanding how to listen versus talk?
So I would say I would have expanded beyond listening. You have to observe, and depending on kind of the modalities that you're using and how you're doing these customer conversations or how you're gathering this information, it may look very different ways, but it's really looking at as many kind of different factors or many different types of input as you can. I worked with a marketing expert when I was kind of early in my career. This would have been late 90s actually. And he made a a point which I stuck with me throughout my career, which is customers don't really know what they want. Meaning, if you ask a customer, like, okay, well, what do you want? They're going to tell you all sorts of things, but they probably won't be able to, they don't have the language, they really don't have the insight to really be able to tell you in very detailed, specific terms, or at least the terms that you would need to be able to build a business around or build a product or service around in a way that is definitive, right? They're gonna say a bunch of things, but the fact is you're going to give them things and then they're not going to buy it, right? And it's because there's probably a whole bunch of other needs that they're really not aware of, or they don't want to tell you, or they're or nuanced and are difficult to communicate. And so the best way, there's kind of layers to this. If you sit down with a customer and say, tell me what you want, it's going to be really difficult. If you sit down with a customer and say, well, okay, here are 15 attributes, which ones do you care about? You're going to get a little bit better of an answer. If you sit down with the customer and say, here's something, tell me what you like and don't like about this thing, that's going to be even better because now they can respond to something real and tangible. The best way is to give them two options and have them choose. And through that process, if you can observe that, right? And sometimes it's about what they say, sometimes it's their facial expressions, sometimes it's their body language, right? There's all different ways you can kind of get to these insights, but giving them options and then figuring out, having them choose one, then figure out why they chose that one is really the only way that you can really kind of figure out preference. Because like I said, the problem is that, not that customers are liars necessarily, but they tell you things based on all sorts of things, what they think you want to hear, what they think they want, right? People, what they actually choose can be quite complicated. So that's why I say it's iterative in the sense it's very experimental, right? And you mentioned kind of earlier stage product market fit, right? Like a lot of the product market fit is going and observing, right? Building prototypes and having people use things, whether it's digital software prototypes or physical prototypes or service prototypes, right? Having them actually engage with it and then seeing what do they do. And we always, the joke in kind of early stage company development is that the only thing that really proves to you that you've got something working or that you've got product market fit is if they're willing to give you money, right? That at the end of the day, that's the test. That's the thing. If they're willing to pay for it, that's showing you that you have real, right? They can tell you they love it. They can tell you, oh yeah, I'll buy it. I'll take 100 of them, all those kind of things. But until they actually give you the money, like you don't really know, like everything is hypothetical. So getting with customers, having the conversations or doing something that gives you real insight in terms of what they actually choose is going to be the way that you kind of figure these things out. Now, in terms of breaking this, we develop what we call an attribute map, right? So a lot of what I'm doing with the people I work with, the companies I work with, is helping them figure out this customer segment. We can talk more about some of those things that help us identify the segment. But once I have a pretty good definition of a segment, I want to actually interact with them in some way that gives me insight on what are the real attributes they care about, or more importantly, what are the real attributes that drive buying behaviors, buying decisions. And if we can figure that out, then we can start looking at how do we stack up to competition? Where do we have obvious advantages? Where could we create advantage? And we can talk about some of the things we can do strategically to create differentiation. But that is fundamentally it. Understanding what is my segment, what are the attributes that they're really making buying decisions on, and then figuring out how to create a product or service that's differentiated against those.
Okay, excellent. So yeah, observing is key. And I don't know about you, but I do find that most people I work with, what they think is the problem is not the problem that they have.
Yeah. So, it's not the real problem. There's always a problem. There's always a presenting problem.
It's usually a symptom.
Yeah.
But what I've found is probably 90% of problems go away if you just sell more. So, it's really about marketing and selling more effectively. And, this is the key. And I think one of the reasons why people have a lot of trouble is lack of research, lack of planning, lack of testing.
Yeah.
Can you talk to those, about sort of what type of research, testing, planning they should be doing as they're preparing to, market their business and products?
Yeah. Well, so if you want to market against your differentiators, meaning you want to communicate to the market how you're unique and different, and so you have to figure out how are you unique and different. A lot of this is going to depend on the product or service you're offering, or kind of the nature of the transaction. If you're, if it's a very transactional, this is like someone's coming in and buying something and leaving. If this an ongoing kind of relationship, if you're a service company, if they're coming back and buying again and again, right? All those things are going to be kind of factors to consider in how you collect it. But like I said, I think the thing is developing insights, right? Like, how do I develop insights around what is who is my customer, right? So some of this is going to be figuring out how to segment in different ways, and then how to actually collect the data. So if you were, if you're a restaurant, right? Like how do you collect information about who is actually coming? And then based on, you understand, demographic, psychographic needs, fears, timing, when do they come? Why do they come? Are they coming, on Tuesdays because they don't have to cook at night? Is it Thursdays because they want to celebrate? Is it Fridays because they're going on dates, right? Like whatever, understand, like, what is your customer doing? Like what is the thing they're trying to address? If you can figure that out, that's kind of stage one. I don't know if you've covered this on the program, but there's like Christensen has this whole model of jobs to be done, which I use with a lot of clients, which is kind of this question of like, what are you hiring? The idea is people hire products or service to do jobs. And if you can figure out the job that your customers are hiring your product or service to do, you can understand, well, what are the attributes? How do I make a better or more differentiated product or service? If I can really understand the job they're trying to do, what is the thing that they're trying to solve? What is the problem they're trying to solve? Job they're trying to do with the product or service that they're buying from you. So, a lot of this is, you can certainly ask questions. You can have direct insight questions, surveys, conversations. You can collect data. I mean, I love just observing. Right. So Clay Christensen has the long or has a fairly elaborate case study on milkshakes. And they're working with a fast food chain on looking at the sales of milkshakes, and they're trying to figure out how to, sell more milkshakes. And they had all this data that a lot of milkshakes were being bought in the morning, and they didn't really understand why. So it's digging into that. Well, why are people buying milkshakes in the morning? What's the job to be done? And they did a whole analysis of it, and they started, talking to some folks who were buying the milkshakes and et cetera. And they, there's this whole analysis of milkshakes versus bagels versus egg sandwiches versus smoothies and things like that. And they looked at, well, they needed, these people needed something that was, nourishing at some level. And they needed, food in the morning. They needed something that would last their commute, right? So they didn't want to have something that they could scarf down right away. Like they wanted something that would kind of satisfy them or entertain them for a period of time. It was, in this case, it was in the South. It was summer. They wanted something cool and refreshing. And they wanted something that was not going to be too messy, right? So like bagels and egg sandwiches and stuff they couldn't have while they're driving. So once they understood the job to be done, they could start figuring out, how do I position this milkshake? How do I position this in a way that's going to be more appealing to those folks? So that jobs to be done framework is a good one, but it's really getting curious about, okay, what is the problem they're trying to solve? What are the challenges they're having with the other solutions, right? All of that is going to start giving you insights into, okay, why are they really buying? Or what are the criteria, the attributes they're using to really make this buying decision? And how could we either change our product or service, or how we're presenting the product and service to better map to those attributes?
Okay, great. So, I think everything in business comes back to analysis and data, information. I mean, definitely the key to making a successful business is, making good decisions, and making good decisions is having good information. I think last week's show was called "The Truth Matters," and in business, the truth is numbers, because they don't lie. And
they can. I've seen numbers lie, but yeah, good numbers. Yeah. Good numbers will be insightful. Yes.
Yeah, good numbers. But at least you can start from facts.
Yes.
So I think that's a key piece. So and you talked about, I always think of it as, figuring out people's need, want, or desire that you have a solution to. So now, when we talk about differentiation, you could have, do you need to differentiate along a lot of points, or could it just be one point? How much differentiated do we really need to try and be?
So, so a couple of factors around here. So I typically want to find 2 to 3 points of differentiation. And the reason is I don't want more than that, because generally it gets really hard to communicate. And honestly, it's, people don't keep track of that many things. Like if I tell someone who's like, okay, there's 7 reasons why we're better than the competition, you're going to lose them after 3 anyway. Right. So actually trying to do more will actually water down your positioning. Having just one, I find, leaves you just a little bit vulnerable. And, that's why I like the 2 to 3. But they have to be meaningful to the segment, right? Now, and this gets a little tricky, but you could have a broad market that cares about 3 things or 4 things. But if your customer segment really only cares about one of those things and then 2 other things, like, you need to find those attributes that are really unique to that segment. And that is the way you're going to differentiate it. Now, the other reason you may need 2 or 3 is you may not find one where you can really, what we call white space, right? So technically the way we do this is we do the customer research, we figure out the attributes, we map out all the attributes, we score ourselves in competition against those attributes. We look to see where are there attributes that there's white space. There's no one who's really winning on that attribute really clearly. If you can find one where no one is doing a good job and you think you can really operationally, like from a capability, assets and capabilities, you could actually own it, great, go for it. Generally, that doesn't happen. Generally, there's usually not an attribute that there's clearly white space that no one is winning in. There's usually someone who's doing reasonably well in just about every single attribute. So it's rare that you're going to find pure white space. So what we have to do is what I call combinatorial white space, meaning, while someone's really good at delivering quickly and someone's really good at high quality ingredients and someone is really good at, delivery hours, right? No one is really good at all 3 of those things. So I need to create a positioning, or I may want to take a positioning, which is, while yes, some people are good at this and good at this and good at this, no one does all 3 of these really well, which is what my segment really wants. And so we have a differentiated position, which is a combination of a set of factors. So that's why we often need 2 or 3 factors, is because that's the only way we can really create a differentiated position, because those factors, there may be winners in each one of those factors, but no one is doing them all together. So that is a way that we can kind of create positioning or create differentiation. And so I would say 2 to 3 is what I'm looking for generally.
Okay. So a couple ways, and then really narrowing out your niche, being able to say how you're different.
Yep.
So now, from Darren Smith, we've got a quote, one of my favorite quotes from Warren Buffett: "Price is what you pay, value is what you get." Mm-hmm. And when you're in business, your goal is to create value for your customers. When you're thinking of value, what does that mean, and how do you quantify that?
Well, I would say the goal of business is to make money, right? And one of the ways we make money is profits, and the way we get profit is creating value. So I think and again, I go back to the perceived value, right? Like, we kind of have quality products and quality service. I mean, that is value, but value is in the mind of the buyer, right? So we need to figure out, how do we create value in the mind of the buyer? And it's the whole, I go to CVS and I can get, a bottle of soda, and it costs me $3, but I go to the movie theater and, it costs me $15, right? So same exact product, right? But the value of that product from a perceived value of that product is vastly different to the person who's about to go to the movie theater about what they're willing to pay for a bottle of soda versus if I'm just going into CVS. So, having that, the what you can command for price is going to be based on the perceived value. Now, if someone is, what's a good example? I don't know, someone's allergic. Say you're, selling something. If someone's allergic to the food that you're selling, it's not going to be very valuable to them, right? Like it has nothing to do with the product quality, how fresh it is, or anything. It's just the fact that for that particular segment, that product is not very valuable because it has lots of negative consequence. It doesn't have the positive attributes of the other segment. So that's why it's important to figure out your segment and figure out, okay, how do we create value? It's going to be a perceived value of how does it make them, does it solve their purchase conundrum that they're trying to solve at the time of looking at your products or service? So, thinking about what are the underlying needs, and I hate to say it, but a lot of this, it's much easier to sell against fear than it is against desire, right? Like it's insurance, right? Like no one buys insurance because they love having insurance. They buy insurance because they want to avoid the potential negative consequences that the insurance will offset, right? So that is a easy way to kind of create value. Perceived value is removing risk or removing uncertainty or removing fear from a situation. And that's, one of the key attributes that we often look at inside purchase decisions. Again, there's a whole nother angle to this, which is, what we call your promise, your brand promise, and your brand promise guarantee, which is how you communicate to the market the attributes that you're selling against and what's the skin that you're willing to put into the game to be able to deliver on those. But that's all about removing fear of purchase. But it's all about the attributes and then understanding the buying psychology. And then how do I make this thing really easy to buy?
Okay. So now, one thing that we had a question for, and actually kind of interesting is, is positioning all you need to charge more?
I would say it's going to have a huge impact over your ability to price. No, you need to deliver on it too, right? Like you can't just message the market, oh, we'll be there in 30 minutes. It's going to be the best quality. And, we operate 24/7. You actually need to be able to do those things. But one of the reasons I love focusing on positioning is once you figure out that positioning, once you figure out strategy, once you figure out positioning in your strategy, that makes all these other sort of decisions and priorities much more apparent and much easier to kind of figure out and execute against. Meaning, if those are the things we're going to win on in the market, now I know that operationally, these are the systems I need, talent point of view, these are the people that I need to have in, this is what I need to train them on. And more importantly, to kind of use a Francis Frey quote is, once you figure out the 2 or 3 things you want to be excellent at, you can decide to suck at everything else. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have to do anything. It just means you don't have to be exceptional, right? Like I just need the minimum, like, okay, I just need to take the basic payment services. I just need to have, the basic kind of decor in the restaurant, right? It's not, I don't need to distinguish myself in those areas. I just need to be good enough. And by doing that, I can free up time, energy, resources, focus to concentrate those things on the 2 or 3 things that I'm differentiated on. Because the fact is you don't have a lot of resources as a small business, right? Like, until you're, a couple $100 million, you just can't invest in everything.
Okay. So actually this is a follow-on that, is differentiation more important than your marketing budget? So, how would you approach
that? I'll use an analogy. I don't know if it's how appropriate it is. So it's like saying, okay, well, is the direction that I'm aiming the cannon more important than the weight of the cannonball that I'm shooting? I would say they're kind of both important, right? Like if you can have the biggest cannonball in the world, but if you don't point in the right direction, you're not going to have much effect. Vice versa, you can have the the most precisely aimed cannonball, but if it's the size of a pea, you're not going to get very far. So I think in the end of the day, you need both. You need very clear directional intent, concentration, focus, and you need, wood behind the arrow to actually get it downrange and have it make an impact onto the target. So, I think they're both required. I honestly would probably start with aiming first and say, okay, let's spend a little bit of money and go downrange and see what happens. Kind of a tracer bullet strategy. It's like, let's put stuff downrange. Let's see if we're hitting the target but not having a huge impact. At least we know we're on target. Then I can start putting more weight behind it. But I certainly wouldn't want to blow huge amounts of budgets in a direction that I'm not confident that I'm actually going to have an impact on.
Okay. So maybe rather than more important, then the differentiation should come first.
I would say more budget won't make up for a bad differentiation.
Right. and but more differentiation might make up for a bit for
the fact is most people are going to have limited budget, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not like, oh, well, I could spend $10,000 or I could spend $1 million. I don't know which. I only have $10,000. I may not have that, so I better figure out how to use it effectively. And I would say, being smart and systematic and strategic about differentiation is going to help you leverage that as best as we can.
Okay, great. So we've been covering some great stuff here, and time goes pretty fast. We're going to take a quick break. Just have a short video commercial. We're doing some new things this year that's helping a lot of business owners. So just want to share a little bit about what that is, and then I'll come back talking with Bruce Eckfeldt and talking small business. Every great business owner needs an expert financial management team. As your business grows, you're going to need more comprehensive financial expertise to help you with these activities. Financing growth, managing cash flow, maximizing profitability, strategic planning and budgeting, accurate, timely information for decision-making, determining the appropriate staffing and inventory levels, and preparation for and analysis of potential opportunities. At this stage, you may not have the budget to hire multiple financial professionals from different firms. However, we can provide an outsourced team with over 100 years of experience in CFO, controller, accounting, tax, and bookkeeping to provide the expertise you need when needed. We will help you with your financial needs from A to Z. Whether you need bookkeeping, we will organize and enter your financial information. Accounting, we will provide accurate, timely financial reporting with analysis of key information and trends. Taxes, we will help you with tax preparation, reporting, and submission. Or CFO services, business strategy, financial projections, KPIs, or financing. We've got you covered from A to Z. Use the link below to schedule a complimentary discovery session. You have nothing to lose. Use the link below to explore how we can help. Okay, welcome back. I'm here with Bruce Eckfeldt, and we're talking small business. Tonight's topic, we're talking about standing out from your competition so that you can command a superior price. So, one thing that I talk with a lot of business owners is price. How do you price? And, I was given an answer, and I usually give people an answer that's not the answer they want to hear. What the market would bear. But it's like, if I knew that, then why I wouldn't have to ask you. So how, what are some strategies around helping people to price? And do you tend to try, or, what are some of the practices or ways you look at pricing?
Yeah. I mean, I would say most small businesses leave a lot of money on the table, right? And the interesting thing about pricing, right? If I can increase prices by 5%, that goes straight to the bottom line, right? That's pure profit. So that's why pricing is so important, because it literally is determining your profit in your business. So a couple of things. So some of this depends on the nature of the product or service and how it's being delivered and how you're pricing it. Right? If it's just a single cash register transaction, that's very different than if you're a multi-phased engagement and you've got multiple deliverables with kind of payment structures and things like that. So some of this depends on what your whole kind of pricing schema is or pricing structure is. But the two things that I always am kind of asking or focusing on is, can we charge different prices for different customers? Meaning, based on the segment, is there an ability to price differently based on the nature of the buyer? The other one is situational pricing, is can I price differently based on timing, the situation, the context of the purchase? And I want to basically run experiments in those different areas to kind of see what is the elasticity or what is the pricing dynamics for those different situations. I think most people kind of approach this as being, oh, well, I have this service, like, should I charge $200, $225, $250? And oftentimes it's like, well, you can probably charge anywhere from $100 to $500 depending on the situation. So I'm often looking at, can we create options, packages, ways of kind of changing our offers such that I can play with the pricing and I can adjust the pricing based on the context and situation. Now, in the end of the day, my cost basis may be exactly the same, but because of the nature of the buying dynamics, I might be able to charge differently. So I always give an example of, I ran consulting for many years, and we had these big clients that had long-term projects, and they would very demanding, and we would charge them premium prices. But we would always end up with like 2 or 3 weeks between projects. We had a couple of people available. We have these teams that were like, okay, like this project isn't ready to start. We're kind of on the bench. So we had what we call dental projects, filling in the cavities of the kind of demand structure or a supply kind of curve. And so we had a couple of clients that we had agreements with that said, okay, well, we will do this project for you. But we get to do it on our terms. We get to decide when we do it, if it's going to be delivered in 6 weeks or 12 weeks or 6 months. And in return for that, we gave them a discount. It was a significant discount on services. We liked it because we basically were able to cover costs. We could make some money with these gaps that we otherwise would have with these premium clients. The clients liked it because they got basically a better price, but they didn't really care. They gave us projects. They didn't care exactly when it got done. So in that case, we could premium price the ones that did care about exactly when it got done, that they wanted to be first priority, et cetera. And then the other clients we charge a different price for. So I'm a big fan of like figuring out what is the pricing, what is the situational pricing based on kind of the time and the nature of the product and kind of everything around it. Underlying costs are the same, but how the customer sees it as valuable. I'm often looking at running pricing tests, meaning, okay, well, what if we charge more? What if we charge less? So, what's the failure rate? What is the conversion rate on some of these things? And figuring out how to optimize it, right? Like I always say, like I can be an amazing salesperson if I cut prices by 50%, right? Like I can sell all the product in the world if you cut prices 50%, but I'm not going to make any money. So you got to figure out, what that is. There was one of my old sales guys that I worked with for a long time had a little cartoon on his wall, and it was a Peanuts cartoon, and it was Sally with her psychiatrist services, and it's like psychiatric help $1 million, and the quote was, "Yeah, I know it's expensive, but I only have to sell one." Right. So the idea is I may not have to sell a lot if I can just find the right time, the right place. I can charge a really premium price. Now I have to be able to deliver on that, and I need to figure out how the economics work. But yeah, I think pricing can be quite sophisticated, and I think people don't really approach it strategically. And you really need to look at where my options are, and most likely you're probably underpricing in general.
Okay, no, that's key. I mean, I think at the beginning you mentioned that, your pricing drives your profitability, and
100%
profit, your margins matter a lot more than your revenue.
Yeah,
in many cases. So, talking to some people, if you just do the math, do a quick analysis, if you're making $5 on every $100 that you're selling, like you said, if you raise your price to 105, you only have to sell half as many to make the same amount of money.
Yeah.
So, figuring, looking at scenarios, trying to optimize the situation is always key.
Yeah.
So definitely that's important. Let me just, we got a couple other questions in the chat. So I want to make sure we get to those. So one of them was actually earlier in this show, but, I think definitely, people would like to know. And let's see, I'm looking for it, but he said, let's see, why did you leave architecture?
Well, I could frame it as a pricing issue, right? Like what I was making as an architect was nothing compared to what I ended up making when I got into technology. I think I tripled my salary, by moving to New York and getting into interactive media. So I think in a more kind of nuanced discussion, every industry kind of changes, and actually I did a lot of computer modeling when I was in school, and the industry was kind of flexing and kind of figuring out how to adopt that. And I had an opportunity to kind of take those underlying skills and capabilities and get into interactive media. And I was kind of curious, and it was fun. It was a great opportunity, and it was a little. There was a lot of drama around it at the time, kind of making a career change like that, but it ended up being a good move. So,
yeah, and I was going to study architecture, but people don't really understand it. So a lot of times they think you just draw pictures, and they treat you that way, even though it's almost like engineering.
It is. It's a form of engineering.
So definitely that's important. So now we've covered a lot. It's already 8:53.
Yeah, I know.
So, we're bumping up on the edge, but we got you for a few minutes, so we want to extract maximum knowledge from you. So what I'd really like to do is have you share 3 key things that people should take away tonight. Most people can only remember 3 things.
You like we said.
Three. So I'll give you a couple minutes to think through what are the 3 key things that people should take away tonight, so that they can learn more and put this to use starting tomorrow. And while you're doing that, I've got some video about a couple upcoming events that we have in July that if you're in the New Jersey area, you definitely don't want to miss. Even if you're not in the New Jersey area, you got enough time to make plans. Come join us and then visit New York on the weekend. So you can't beat that. So we'll be back in a minute talking small business with Bruce Eckfeldt. Join us for the Power Network event at Makerhoods in the Kruger Mansion in Newark, New Jersey on Thursday, July 24th. Meet with like-minded entrepreneurs in a relaxed environment to chat, connect, and collaborate. I'm Andrew Frazier. Please join me at our Power Network event, and I look forward to introducing you to our members and friends. To learn more and register, visit www.sbpro.com/power-network today. We're here at the Small Business Power Breakfast and Conference. Excited to say that we had a great day.
This event was a wow. Every panel, every speaker has had so much amazing content and good information to share.
This is a good day to put aside to come out and do some learning, but also make some great connections. The ones that I made were impactful.
Hi, I'm Andrew Frazier, masterpreneur and founder of the Small Business Pro University. For more than 10 years, Our events have directly resulted in tens of millions of dollars in both revenue and financing for attendees. Join me at the Small Business Pro Power Conference on July 25th at NJ Pack's Nico Kitchen and Bar in Newark, New Jersey, to learn best practices, enjoy great networking, and gain useful knowledge. We will supercharge your day. I look forward to seeing you at the Small Business Pro Power Conference on July 25th in NJ Pack at Nico Kitchen and Bar in Newark, New Jersey. To learn more and register, visit www.sbprou.com/conference. All right, good evening. I'm back with Bruce Eckfeldt. Getting ready to close out the show, but we had a great discussion on really, how to stand out from your competition and command a superior price. So Bruce is going to share the 3 most important things you should take away from what we discussed this evening. So what would you say that is, Bruce?
Yeah, I would start with just the idea of really understanding your customer. Have a customer segment, a niche, and really understand them. What makes them different from other people? What do they care about? What really drives their purchase behavior, their purchase decisions? What are the attributes? I always like to think of, if I'm dealing with a very rational customer, like I want to see the spreadsheet they're using to kind of score their options, right? Like that, I think that's number 1. Get really clear on who is your segment. What are their needs and fears? What are their demographic, psychographic profiles, right? The more you can do to understand your customers, the more success you can have, the more kind of you're going to have to work with. So that's number 1. Number 2, find those 2 or 3 things. What are the 2 or 3 areas that you can be unique and different in the market from both direct and indirect competitors? So direct competitors are things that look and sound just like you. Indirect are the other ways they could solve their problem. How are you different, right? We compete to be different, not to win, right? So what are the differentiators, the unique position you could have in the market? And then third is that just the iterative development, that iterative approach to this is like, how do you continually learn? How do you adjust? You're not going to get it right in the beginning, right? But make some, try some things, learn from them, get the insights, refine it over time. Markets are going to change, customers are going to change, competitors are going to change. You're going to need to be able to do this repeatedly. But if you can set up a system, set up a process by which you're gathering customer insights, figuring out that differentiated position, and then executing on it operationally, that's going to be a muscle. That's going to be a process, a rhythm that's going to help you, grow, not only just grow the business, but grow the business profitably and smartly and create more value.
Excellent. So, understanding your customer. It all begins with that. What is their problem and how are you going to solve it? 2 or 3 areas where you're unique. So how do you differentiate yourself? So having clarity around that. So, your solution needs to be differentiated as well. And then 3, actually say 3 again real quick.
Iterate. This is going to iterative process, right? This is going to be, you need to continually refine this over time.
So you're continually learning and, taking what you learn and employing it and learning more and then trying it again. So, no, I think this is great. Definitely, I think the audience got value out of you being here tonight, and definitely appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to do this. But before you go, is there anything you want to share?
Yeah, no. If anyone wants to get more information, we've scratched the surface. There's a lot we can do around strategy and positioning. You check out my website, eckfeldt.com. I write for Inc. I've got a couple hundred articles there, and the many articles on strategy. So if you look at inc.com, search for my name, you'll see those. And then just keep researching. Right. I think the one thing that I learned as an entrepreneur, as a founder, as a CEO was constantly educating myself. I think you said in the beginning, right? You can't learn everything about business, right? But you have to continuously, educate yourself, keep learning, keep evolving. that's the only way you're going to win.
Definitely. So you've got Bruce's website in the chat as well as his LinkedIn profile. So feel free to reach out to him. Thanks again, Bruce. If you can, hang out for a few minutes and let me just close things out. All right, everybody. Always appreciate everybody tuning in on Tuesday nights. Definitely your comments and your questions are very helpful. And, definitely adds to the energy of the show and makes the show better. So always encourage comments and questions. Thanks for joining us live. For those who didn't join us live, hopefully you'll still get a lot out of the episode. Each week we have a new topic and a new guest. And so just give you a quick preview of next week. So next week, we're going to talk about stop playing it small, communicate like a CEO. And that's with Mark Williams. And, definitely he brings a lot of energy and excitement. And, communication, if there's one skill that you focus on that's most valuable to you, your business, or your job, it's communication. So you don't want to miss next week's show. So hopefully you'll be able to join us or catch the replay. So thanks again for tuning in. And always remember, at the end of the day, the more that you know, the faster and more successfully your business is going to grow.
Thank you for listening to Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbpro.u.com.